We have a very exciting seminar planned for you. Before we get started, I'll tell you a little bit about Avalerus. We are a Microsoft Identity and Access Gold partner. We're also a Enterprise Solutions. Essentially, the work that we do is niche. We've been involved in quite a number of large deployments of online service delivery systems for clients like Alberta Health Services and Cancer Care Ontario. Most of these identity management products. Today's seminar is very interesting to me. I'm very excited about it because it's on Microsoft's new method of providing online identity services using a product called Azure B2C. And I think there's great promise in this technology because it offers a significant amount of efficiency and flexibility for clients that are interested in deploying it. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Martin Prue, who's our senior consultant working in Avalerus. He's been the primary consultant on a number of online service delivery projects that we've done. I've worked with him quite closely over the past 3 years. So without further ado, Martin, if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about today's topic.
All right. Thank you very much, Hugh. As Hugh mentioned, I've been working on quite a few online service delivery solutions at Avalerus, whether it's for Alberta Health Services or other clients. These kinds of solutions are very comprehensive, and most of them have been on-premise solution with a lot of what's very exciting to me, as Hugh mentioned, for this new technology that is very easy. You can rapidly adopt that technology, and it's all cloud-based. So the goal for this presentation will be to basically talk about that technology and how it could fit with your organization. There's a lot of promise to this, and based on the experience from the last few years, I can say that the configuration elements, the functionality, Microsoft has done a really great job in bringing that kind of technology to the next level. I have 3 questions. I wanted to start with talking about the technology itself, so you can kind of get an overall feel for what it is, and then talk about the main benefits. There are a lot of benefits to this, so we'll go over those. And then lastly, talk a little bit more about how the technology actually functions, mainly talking about how easy it is to configure. So you'll get an overall feel for this new technology and how it's really the next level for online service delivery. So if we're kind of talking about online service delivery in general, we already touched upon this, like yours. Really, you want to provide access to various online services. So whether it's government or private, whether it's for your citizens or for your users in general, you've built portals to that provide quite a bit of functionality. But at the same time, there's a lot that you have to build around the registration and authentication process. You want to give your users the ability to self-manage a lot of that process, but there's a lot of code, there's a lot of maintenance, there's a lot of planning involved around that part of the process. So traditionally, those systems, similar to the ones we've built, have been on-premise, but more and more the trend is to have more hybrid type solutions. And in this case, we're really tying into a very powerful cloud technology that takes care of some of those aspects. Again, if you have any questions along the way, don't hesitate to thinking as I'm going to demonstrate this technology, how does that fit? Think about kind of the different areas where online service deliveries can be applied. We've worked with quite a few large government organizations, and for example, in the healthcare space, allowing citizens access to their healthcare data, as well as provide access to various payment type systems for parking tickets or any of those types of services. And then in the private industry, whether it's financial or all other areas, there's a number of applications that are available, and pretty much all of those types of portals can be, you could supplement your current functionality with something like Azure AD B2C, especially in the types of scenarios that I'll be demonstrating. It's really really powerful technology. So the first area is actually talking about what the product is. So I'll go over a little bit of that. If you think about the authentication process, you've built some functionality around that. Typically, that would involve something like what you see on the screen, where a user could decide to register or sign up if they don't have an account, or they can sign up. You're managing the process, the user experience around that. The code changes as the system evolves. So there's a lot going on there. So what about how does that fit in with this new technology? Well, with Azure AD B2C, which is business to consumer, it's really built on top of the existing Azure Active Directory cloud base. And at the core of what I'll be demonstrating is the fact that it is a consumer identity management solution that also extends to social accounts, as well as the concept of a local account with, let's say, an email and a password. It's also very powerful. Current technologies for web application publishing on all types of platforms are supported, so you can rapidly integrate with an Azure AD B2C instance. And really, if you have that available, after this demo, I would really recommend just, and then it's very easy to add to some of your current web applications. So that was kind of what Azure AD B2C is about, but how can it be beneficial to you? So if you think about the kind of problem space that I talked about, you want to provide users access to your services. Ideally, depending on your scenario, you might want to give them the ability to use their current credentials. So if they have Google, for example, most of your user base has that. You could build your own interface to that. But this is all part of Azure AD B2C. Usually organizations would not necessarily, especially with the trend towards cloud solutions, have to build and maintain that kind of technology. In my experience, I'd say that about 50% of a type of online service delivery project, most of the work for the development and the user experience, all of that, usually it's about 50% of the work just to maintain and build. So I think this kind of technology is really, really the future, where you don't have to build and maintain that. It's really Microsoft's taking that responsibility. And as you'll see in on the admin portion, all of that functionality is available to you, and it's actually there's new functionality being added, and you don't have to do that yourself. So if you think about the types of challenges that you face, that you might see in your day-to-day planning of these kinds of solutions, I think the main thing here is that development time and development cost. That can extend a project if there are any changes to the user experience, the business challenges, whether it's security and privacy or maintaining your infrastructure. So that really adds to the overall cost. And if you think about performance, there might be times where, let's say it's a school registration, or where teachers will enter the grades or any type of application will have different level of activity at different times throughout the year. So how do you forecast for that? How do you plan for that? Usually you plan your infrastructure around that, and that's your, at the worst case, this is what we should be able to handle. Well, with the cloud solution, you don't have to worry about that. It's actually pay per use, and it's highly scalable. So all of this that you see here, I talked about most of these, but you're probably going to recognize some where you've really had to deal with that in the last online service delivery project that you've worked on. So how does Azure AD B2C help with some of these? I think the key point and the most important point of this presentation is the reduced time to implementation and reduced development costs. All of that functionality, which is, like I said, about 50% of the work. It's not just the content that you're providing, it's actually all the experience of the user to register and to manage their account and all that. That's all pre-built. That is the purpose of this solution, is to make it easy to create policies for registration, authentication, and profile management. And that's all done in the cloud. Your application just calls those policies, as I'll be showing later. You're not security, scalability, and maintenance benefits, similar to what I talked about before. So everything that Microsoft has built for Azure Active Directory, all the security features, scalability, and so forth, you get all of that as part of the solution. So how does it work? Now that you know kind of what it could do for your solution, well, how does it work behind the scenes? And a lot of the demos, the main concept for Azure AD B2C is really the concept of policies. So you see here, those are the four main types, and you can map it to some of the main scenarios for online service delivery, whether it's the registration experience, which is signing up for an account, or authentication, which is signing in to be able to access your solution. Once the user registers and authenticates, well, usually one of the main functions for self-service management is actually the question of password reset, even multi-factor authentication. That's also part of the solution, similar to what you already know from Azure Active Directory. So basically that will be the goal of the demonstration, and that's where most people, when they see this, when they actually see it in action, that's where, you can really understand how it can be beneficial. So the demonstration itself, I'll show kind of the client side first, and then I'll show how the administrators could add a policy or modify a policy. Again, if you have any questions along the way, don't hesitate. I'll be sharing my screen at this point. What you see here is an example of a portal page, which you would probably recognize, just providing access to various features that are relevant to your organization, just signing in or signing up for an account. I've basically configured the page to make it easy to demonstrate the B2C policies, but typically for your organization it would be either one link directing to an option to sign in or sign up, or provide both options right on the home page. So there's a lot of user experience work involved, but from a B2C perspective, it's really calling a specific policy, and then the Microsoft does the rest. So it's all done in the cloud once a user selects one of those options. So I'm going to go ahead and try one of those. So let's say a user wants to sign up for an account. When I'm going to click here, it's actually going to be calling the B2C instance. The only part of the demo that is basically the application itself is this page and the claims page that I'll be showing after. The rest is all in the cloud, or at least directed from the cloud. So a user clicks on sign up. It's actually calling the B2C instance, and the B2C sign up page will appear. And you can see that where that can be modified. But for a sign up experience, If various providers have been selected, then this would appear. So in this case, when I talked about being a local account, or there are two social media, they know they already have a Google account, so they're going to select that. So at that point, but to basically integrate with Google. So that usually is pretty quick. So there must have been just a delay in the internet here. So so this is basically the user's been redirected to Google, and they have the option to enter their email. And then they can enter their password. And sign in. At that point, Google redirects back to B2C, and the sign-up policy has been configured so that there are additional attributes that are required to complete the sign-up process. At this, I'm going to go do that. So when the user clicks continue, at that point is when the account will be created in B2C. And the B2C will redirect the user back to the portal page. And for those familiar with the concept of claims, like the user enters their information, it is part of the sign-up process. But there's another part of the process that actually what the application will get back from the overall process. And those claims are what can help with the application logic to know who the user is so that the proper information can be displayed. So I'm going to go ahead and click continue. At that point, the account is created in B2C, and the application has received basically the claims as part of that process, and the user has a token to allow him to basically access that functionality. So for those who'd like to know, I was talking about claims, so without spending too much time here, just to give you an idea of what it could look like for those who have seen some of this before. You can see that some of the claims that I entered during the sign-up process are available here. I added the identity provider claim so that the application knows the user is actually coming from Google. There's a unique object identifier, which is a very important concept. So the application knows who the user is and can use that basically for the rest of the functionality. And it even shows which policy was triggered, which is the sign-up. So that's the result of the sign-up operation. So all of that can help basically guide the application logic after a policy has been completed. So that is the sign-up experience as defined. And I'll show you later the settings that I've used to create that policy. But once I created that policy, application logic, it was basically just calling a specific policy. That's how powerful this technology is. So I'm going to sign out at this point so I can show you another policy. As I mentioned, usually there's an option to sign up or sign in. If user already has an account, or if you're not sure if they have one, you can redirect them to a page that has both options. And that's a very important concept in terms of the benefits of the solution. This technology is in public preview, and at the beginning, the policy called sign up or sign in was added, and it was immediately available to us. Microsoft will keep adding new functionality, and it will be available to all B2C instances. So in this case, the user doesn't know, and so they click on sign up or sign in. So this is the default sign up or sign in page. You'll notice that it's essentially kind of a sign in page with an additional sign up option at the bottom. and it's been the layout. They don't know. They don't have an account, so they're gonna go sign up. It's basically configured to do a local account. So what I want to demonstrate here is the local account sign up process. So it's pretty much what you would expect when we don't have an existing credential. Usually you will add your email address, and then you'll see that there are instructions, and there's an option to, actually the user is forced to enter a verification code. So for those who've built these kinds of solutions, usually that email validation process can be a multi-step process. So there can be quite a bit of work to define that. Well, it's all built in to the solution. So at that point, there was an email that was sent to the user. So I'm going to go log into the email. And you can see that there was the user received an email, and here's the code. And you click Verify Code, and then the email address has been validated. So at that point, the option actually changes to change email. The user could change the email, and then it would have to validate again because it's a new email address. They also have to enter passwords. And you can see as I'm typing, the password complexity rules are on screen. And I'll go ahead and enter the rest of the information. Two more policies, and I actually demonstrated kind of in one flow, so that you can kind of see all the policies. And the UI is slightly different for each, so it's very interesting to see, and it might help you think that maybe only one or two of these would be useful to you. So let's say a user already has an account and they want to sign in. So this is the sign-in page. It's very similar to that first sign-up page. So the user either has a local account or one of the social media accounts. So let's sign in with the account that we just created. So for a local account, you can see this is a very generic page, and it's what you would expect. So if you've built this, if you've seen Active Directory Federation Services, if you've seen Azure Active Directory sign-in page, it's very similar. And you'll notice that there's a can't access your account link. So part of this solution, you're benefiting from all of that functionality. There's that password reset capabilities, and also there's multi-factor authentication options available. So when a user clicks sign in, well, it's going to complete that process, and the claims are also returned for the portal to know who the user is, and then the user can go from there. So at that point, you've seen sign up or sign in. You've seen sign in itself, but there's one more policy. It's actually editing the profile. So similar to all the other ones, when I click this link, it's actually everything's going to be in the cloud. You don't build any of that. So this is the default profile editing page, and these are the attributes that have been selected as part of this policy that the user can modify. So let's say there's been a name change, and now I click continue, and their account is basically updated in the client portion of the demo. It can be integrated to all types of applications, and it's basically all the processing happens in the cloud for those processes. You might wonder how you set those policies and what the user interface is like, how quickly you could set that up. So the next part of the demo is really the admin portion. So for those with Azure Active Directory, those already using this, you'll be familiar with this kind of interface. This is the B2C, the main screen for the B2C management. If I click on users here, you'll see that the two users that I created, Aegis 4 and now Aegis 2, are Azure AD, basically all of those options. But the main configuration of the B2C policies is actually, you have to go in this section, Manage B2C Settings, and it's kind of the newer look and feel for some of the administration interface. It's very intuitive. When you start working this, it's very intuitive, and it has kind of the left to right flow. And you can see that the main options are actually in that second column, and basically set the configuration elements that could be used as part of your policies. So the first thing you would do is go in the Manage section, create an application. Then you could use those configuration elements and create the policies that will be used in your application. If I click on Applications, you can see that there's a few, and the one that I've basically demonstrated in this today are in the test app. And there are a variety of kind of configuration elements. There's no point going over all of this. But when you integrate with Azure AD B2C, then you basically can add some code that will integrate with B2C. What about identity providers? You've seen local accounts, and you've seen the two social identity providers. So here are the ones that are available for the policies. If I click on Add, you'll see, and if I click on Identity Provider Type, PIN and Amazon. So those would be available. If I click on Setting up the Identity Provider, I could add those to basically as an option. And one thing that's really interesting, similar to what I said before, new functionality is always being added. So this list will continue to expand. There'll be new identity provider types, and you don't have to code any of that. It's all part of this cloud solution. What about attributes? Demonstrated, there are only, I selected a few to be displayed, but all of these are available. So those are mainly built-in attributes. But if you wanted to add custom attributes that would be relevant to your application, you could do that here. And what's interesting in terms of the profile editing process, you could manage all of that. All of those attributes could be basically used for your solution, but it doesn't mean you can't extend that. What you receive in the claims is one part of the solution, but you could extend it and have a multi-step process. So it's very powerful. The extensibility of this is out. Here's where you would configure them. And then you would have all of your global settings available for to be used in the different policies. There's also some password reset policies around the authentication process that can be defined. I'm not going to go over all of them. They're quite similar of how easy it is to administer. So if I click on the test app sign-up policy, which is the one that I demonstrated, it actually gives the option to test that. So you could, if I were to run this, it would actually run the policy itself. So it makes it very easy to make some changes and test them right within this application, instead of having to do some code changes or actually go back to your web application to do that testing. If I click on Edit, you'll see it's very intuitive. It's very close to what I described in the demonstration, and that's all you need to do. So if you think about identity providers, there were those kind of global settings that I talked about. Well, here, what about the attributes that are displayed on the page? Selected, or basically those 6 were available, and they were required as part of the process. So even if a user went to Google, when they came back to the B2C and those were not populated, well, the user had to enter that information. What about the claims, the information that is sent back to the application once the process has been completed? Well, that is also configurable. And you can see that similar to the claims page that I showed, all of these claims were available to the application, including the identity provider. It was showing it was Google, as well as the object ID, which is the unique identifier for that user. For those familiar with Active Directory, and the really neat thing is that these policies, you can basically configure all settings. If I click make a change and click save, it's immediately available to your application. The user would select sign up and they would see an additional provider, or the token lifetime would be different, right? I talked about multi-factor authentication. It's as simple as turning that feature on or off, and then that's also very powerful. I mean, you think Microsoft, the acquisition of phone factors, and basically adding the ability to have a second factor, use a mobile device as part of the authentication process. Well, that's all part of the B2C, so that's available to you. What about customization? I talked about the fact that some pages could be for each policy type. You can see there are a series of pages that can be customized. So here it's showing that there's the identity provider selection page. That was the first page where you saw the three options. If they choose a local account or a social account, the page that showed the attributes, that's what this means. And then if there's an error, there's actually an error page. So all of those can be customized. So if I go to select some of those to show you what the options are, the key point here is that the use custom page option, if you say yes, you could point to your own styling page. And what B2C will do is in real time, it's going to basically get your styling from the page that you selected here and combine it with the B2C policy items, and that's what the user will see. For the selection page, you can actually change the labels that were in those rectangles that basically identify the provider type. So that's the customization for this page. But something really interesting is that for the attributes that were displayed for the policy, what you can do as well is change the order. So I basically said that these 6 attributes are displayed as part of the sign-up process. Well, if you think that display name doesn't really make sense at the end, you could put it as the right after the other names, and they can put a nickname or something like that that would be relevant to them. So as soon as I click OK and save, that's what the user would see. So that's how powerful this technology is. So that was essentially what I wanted to demonstrate for the administration portion. It's really powerful technology, and I think by experience, building these types of solutions can be very lengthy effort, a lot of customization, a lot of planning around that process. To have a technology like this where you can, in a matter of clicks, basically change the whole experience, and it's very intuitive, I think it's really, Microsoft did an amazing job with this. So at that point, I'd like to turn over to the audience for any questions.
Hi, Martin. Thank you so much. So we do have a couple of questions here. So firstly, the question, you were speaking of passwords. So where are these passwords stored, and how are they secured?
Yeah, it's a great question. So basically, you get all the benefits of the Azure Active Directory technology. So for local accounts, obviously for social accounts, then that's a responsibility of a Google or a Facebook to manage. But the great thing about this solution is that you don't have to manage it yourself. So the main benefit is that you don't have to manage all of that in terms of those credentials. It's all either part of Azure or part of the social credential itself.
How scalable is this solution?
Yeah, a great question. In terms of scalability, I think the main point is that in terms of the cloud technology, you get all of those benefits. So it basically affects the pricing model as well. Great thing is if you want to try this, you can create a B2C instance right now. and try it. You can test it and even deploy it. And for a certain number of users, it's actually free. And then as cloud technology, and you get all of those benefits.
Do you expect this to be generally available?
Another great question. So for those familiar with the public preview, this was essentially announced around September, October timeframe. There's been quite a bit of functionality added since. There's even a mention of premium type feature. There's a lot of work being done, and I would recommend going and point you to some of those if you're interested. But right now, my indication of when it actually would be generally available.
Thank you, Martin. So one more question here. Does this support single-page applications?
Yeah, I mean, I think depending on the definition of that, I would say based on the documentation that I've seen, it does support, it's very flexible. Pretty much all of the web technology, the main B2C documentation. If you create a B2C instance, I showed you where the manage settings link is. The link just above that one, it points to all of the documentation, and you can get a lot of examples. But if the demo kind of was a single page app, or kind of self-contained and using all of the B2C policies. So depending on what you mean by that, I would recommend going over that documentation.
Thank you, Martin. I think we have time for one more question. So finally, how difficult or how much time would it take to deploy a configuration such as the one you showed in your demo?
Great question. I think that's probably the most interesting thing about this to me personally when I tried it, is by experience knowing how much effort it is. Basically there are two steps. So if you go create your global B2C settings, you create your policies, and that can be done within a matter of hours. And then obviously there's the integration work with your application, which can take more or less time. But the key point of this presentation is that all of that work can be done very, very quickly now.